Hi parents, my name is Kristen Tortorella. I'm the junior high pastor here at North Coast Fallbrook. Hey, Sunday we started a new series, brand new series. It's going to be about 5 or 6 weeks. It's the sex series, and so I hope you guys got my letter about that. Anytime during this series, if you feel that you would prefer to have your student just stay with the adults for church, that's totally fine. Everyone's at a different level, and it's totally up to you guys and how you want to discuss this with your student. Real quick, this series is not designed to be a sex education course, but rather just helping us as Christians figure out what do we do with our sexuality. God says one thing, the world says another, and how can we stay pure? So the first week, yesterday was what was God thinking when he created sex? What was God's design for sex? We talked about 2 myths. The first one is that sex is wrong. And we looked at 1 Timothy 4:4. And we just talked about that everything that God created is good. Sometimes how we treat it is wrong. So sex itself isn't wrong. Myth number 2 was that sex is limitless. And we looked at 1 Thessalonians 4:5. And this was just talking about that although it is good, it's not without boundaries. And then we went to talk about 2 boundaries that God places on sex in the Bible. And the first one is that sex was intended to be between a man and a woman. And we looked at Genesis 1:27 and 28 to talk about that. The second boundary that God places on marriage, or on sex, is that it's intended for marriage. So we looked at Genesis 2:24 and Hebrews 13:4, and we talked about how those are the 2 restrictions that God places on this amazing gift of sex that he's created. It's not a bad thing, and it can be amazing when we use it in the right way, the way that the designer of it intended for it to be. So the title of this series, I don't think I mentioned, is called Sex by Design. So we're really trying to get at the core of for what purpose did the designer make it. And the thought for the week was that God's plan is perfect, and God's plan for sex is perfect. And so as junior hires, we're going to have to decide, are we going to let the world's lies about sex dictate how we treat it, or are we going to take God's truth seriously and make that the truth in our life for how we handle and deal with our sexuality? One question that you might want to ask your student is kind of in preparation for next week or in a couple of weeks is, what does the world communicate to teenagers about sex? You might want to mention, we talked about some commercials on Sunday, or TV shows, books, magazines, music lyrics. What does the world want us to believe about sex? That might be a good question to jump off of. And also, you just might ask them if they're surprised by anything that we talked about on Sunday about the myths about sex or God's design for sex, if it was something they already knew, or if they were surprised by it. So also, just so you guys know, we're going to have some cards that students are going to be able to fill out during this series with some questions. So yeah, just a heads up for you guys. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.